أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن يعمل سوءا أو يظلم نفسه ثم يستغفر الله يجد الله ثم يستغفر الله يجد الله غفورا رحيما. Dear friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I recited Surah Nisa Ayat number 101. In this ayat, Allah tells us that you should bow down before Allah for forgiveness of your sins and evil practices. What type of evil practices you have done, you have to request for forgiveness. Allah is ready to forgive you because Allah is the most forgiving, the most merciful. Abdullah bin Masud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, this is the best ayat in Holy Quran to give a hope to that person who is going to Allah just for forgiveness of his sins and evil practices. We read this ayat, we will understand inshallah. So Allah said, وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ سُوءًا, and a person who has done an evil practice or bad deed. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ, and the person who يَعْمَلْ, who has done سُوءًا, evil practice. أَوْ يَظْلِمْ, or the person oppressed himself. He has done zulm on him. He oppressed himself. Nafsahu, himself. Aw yazlim nafsahu, or he oppressed himself. Summa, then, yastaghfirillah, then the person seeks forgiveness of Allah. Yajidillah, so he or she will find Allah. Ghafura Rahima, the most forgiving, the most merciful. So in this ayat, Allah said, وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ سُوءًا أَوْ يَظْلِمْ نَفْسَهُ ثُمَّ يَسْتَغْفِرِ اللَّهَ يَجِدِ اللَّهَ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. And a person who has done an evil practice, bad deed, or oppressed himself by doing evil deed, but then he or she seeks forgiveness of Allah, so he or she will find Allah the most forgiving, the most merciful. You can understand that when a person is doing evil practice, he is going to make his future life in loss. So how he or she can compensate himself or herself? There is only one way, astaghfar. Just bow down before Allah for forgiveness. So you have to look that the sins or the evil practices are mostly two types. One are belonging to Allah and the others are belonging to the creation of Allah. So the person who is a Muslim person, he is a responsible person, responsible for rights towards Allah, responsible for the rights towards the people, towards the creation of Allah. So if a person who is doing a sinful act with which the other creation of Allah is disturbed, so that is called su. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ سُوءًا. Su is that type of evil practice which make other person in trouble. You like a person who steals something, so it mean this thief he made a trouble for other person because other person was having how much money or how much the resources the person was saving, the thief has gone to take away that, so he made the other person life in trouble. Similarly, if a person who is abusing other person physically, so it means that is the sinful act which is hurting other person. So this person is not fulfilling the rights and responsibilities to the creation of Allah. So this type of sinful act in which a person is relating with the rights and responsibilities to the creation of Allah, and if a person is not fulfilling that one and disturbing the creation of Allah, then this type of sinful act is big sinful act, and the person who wants to get rid of this sinful act, so that person bow down before Allah, but going before Allah, this person have to go to that person to whom he or she has done this type of trouble problem. Like if a person who has stolen something, he has to return that stolen thing to the person and then return to Allah, request for forgiveness. Then summa yastaghfirillah, then request for Allah for forgiveness. Yajidillah, then this person will find Allah Ghafur Rahima, will find Allah the most merciful, most forgiving, the most merciful. Similarly, if a person who has taken bribery from someone, so he has taken the resources of other person, see that person have to return that, then come back to Allah for forgiveness. Similarly, if a person who has who were having amana or the trust of someone, and that person has not returned, so that person has to return that, so he should not be dishonest, he has to return that one to the person who was the owner of that, and then come back to Allah for forgiveness. So this way is those type of evil practices which are in relation to other persons or other creation of Allah, the person must have to go to request that person for forgiveness, then come back to Allah for forgiveness, then Allah will forgive that person because Allah is ready to forgive every time. But keep in mind, if a person who has done sexual evil with someone, so like some woman, the person has done sexual intercourse with some woman, so the man should not allowed to go before that woman for forgiveness. So for this person, the person must bow down before Allah for forgiveness only. So this is very important. We have to understand. So this su mean that type of evil practice which is disturbing other people, or which is harming other people, or which is in relation with other people. So then the next what Allah told in this, aw yazlim. Yazlim mean zulm. Zulm mean oppression. Like if a person yazlim nafsahu, if a person who oppressed himself. This zulm is that type of sinful practice which is belonging to the person himself. For example, if a person who is drinking alcohol, so this is a sinful practice which belongs to the person himself. So if a person who is drinking alcohol, it means that person is doing zulm on himself or oppressing himself. So this oppressed person is just bow down before Allah for forgiveness and request Allah, then Allah will forgive. Very important this one, that a person, even you can see the salah is compulsory to perform 5 times a day, but this is in relation with the person himself or herself. So for this purpose, the person must bow down before Allah for forgiveness. Similarly, like any type of other sinful act which is just relating to the person himself, then that person should have to bow down before Allah in sajda, especially at the time of tahajjud, and the person should pray 2 rakat salatul astaghfar, then bow down in sajda and request for forgiveness, and inshallah, and mentioning in the request that I have done this type of sinful act, I request for forgiveness. Inshallah, when a person is begging for forgiveness, to Allah will forgive that person, inshallah. Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that if a person who commit sinful practice, then try to do wudu properly and pray 2 rakah nafal salah, and after that bow down just for astaghfar before Allah, then Allah will forgive the sins of that person, inshallah. So this is very important. You keep in mind sometime, like the sins the person has done himself. Some sins of the person, they occupy himself and make his life a trouble, just not one time but again and again, because the person has done so many sinful acts. So those sinful acts who are like those sinful acts which are done to disturb other person, like for example, if a person who blame other person, slandering or blaming, so that person is blaming other person that this person has done this sinful act, but the person is not done, but he is blaming only. So the person has not done that, but the person is blaming only. So this type of sinful act is like this type of sinful act. These sinful act, they are called ism, alif sa mim, in Holy Quran. And these sinful act are big sinful act. And if a person is doing these type of sinful act, so then and the person will lose the capability for doing good deeds in future. Even the other sinful act which are also called ism, like those sinful act which are done by the person intentionally. The person first of all make intention to do that, and then practically is doing that one. So this type of sinful act is direct disobedience of Allah, and this is called ism. If a person who is doing this type of sinful act, and that person loses guidance of Allah and go astray or go off the guidance, so he tilt from the sirat mustaqim, and the right path is going away from that person. So the life of that person then moves on other than sirat mustaqim. So that person becomes the a partner of shaitan and follow shaitan, then his life becomes like away from real Islam. Similarly, if a person who is doing nifaq means hypocrisy, like what the person is doing himself, inside is different, outside is different. Hypocrisy is that type of thing which takes away the guidance from the person, who motivate him to do good things on Sirat Mustaqim. So that is gone away if a person is doing nifaq. Hypocrisy is that type of sinful act which makes a person away from doing good deeds, and then person likes to do sinful act again and again and becomes away from Islam and go into the group of those people who are called munafiqeen, and munafiqeen place for them in the hellfire is the worst place which Allah mentioned also, and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned in hadith also. So this way we have to look after our life, and we must bow down before Allah. Whatever we have done, the sinful act, like Allah said, Summa yastaghfirillah. So we have to bow down before Allah, having the sense of responsibilities that we were responsible to do the good things, but we have not done. We became lazy or we ignored that time. So we are before you, O Allah. Please forgive and make our life, remaining part of our life, streamline on Sirat Mustaqim. And when you are requesting Allah in this way, and then try to be a nice person, and then hopefully this type of intention will make your request before Allah acceptable, and your sins will be forgiven, and then you will have hate for the sinful act and love to do the good things, and that will bring you before Allah, and mashallah, your this life and the life hereafter will be better. We request Allah to make our this life and life here after better. Amin.